Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and it's the 20th of June, 2017. I'm delighted to have a room full of people, and also I know many people watching this by recording. So good on you. It's excellent, as we would say here in Ireland. It's excellent to know that as graduate students, you are interested in looking at yourselves. And because that's part of the task, isn't it? We're up against our own self and the things that gets in the way of our finishing as much as we're up against the task of finishing. That's called metacognition, by the way. We'll talk about it in more depth through the rest of the year. But metacognition is one of the big transferable skills from your master's or doctoral program into leadership in industry. So again, more on that. And one of the people in the room is thinking about studying procrastination. So you'll have a few slides. Actually, before I forget, that makes me put up our slides in the handout area. And I realize now that if you're watching this by recording, on the page, if you're in the big marker, if you get it through the big marker recording page, on that page you'll have the recordings or the handouts available as well. If you are watching this through the Doctoral Net channel on YouTube, then you won't have them, but most of the slides go up in SlideShare, and you can put in the title of the webinar and you'll be able to get the slides. So just a second. Here it is. Slides going up in the handout column. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they are there. Yep, uploaded successfully. So there you have your handouts. Now, I like to start with some quotes. I like to see what the rest of the world says about the topics that we talk about in such a specific way. The difference between an amateur and a professional is their habits. An amateur has amateur habits. A professional has professional habits. We can never free ourselves from habit, but we can replace the bad ones with good ones. Maybe not the strongest sentence structure in the world, but I think his point is well taken. Nothing that we are talking about today is irreversible. Not even some of the people who were in the research that I'll discuss that was studying pretty extreme maladaptive cases. Procrastination is one of the most common and deadliest of diseases. It takes its toll on success and its toll on success and happiness is heavy. And the artist who aims at perfection in everything achieves it in nothing. So why did I choose those? Well, because it is important that we take ourselves seriously and we develop strong work habits, and that we don't let procrastination or perfectionism, for that matter, take us away. On the other hand, perfection is not a great thing to shoot for because it has some negative unintended consequences. So that's where I started my journey. Our goals are that I hope everyone leaves feeling better about themselves and their bad habits. And I hope that you leave with some tools that you have in your tool chest to try whenever you need them. And remember, this is from my nephew. It's one of those guiding things that somebody said to me. What matters in life is not how well we do things, but how well we get back to doing them when we have stopped. And I know from my life, I might have the best habits in the world, and then 6 months later, they can have just disappeared. Adrian says it's important to see past these bad habits and get to the crux of the problem, which is, what is the root cause? What are we afraid of? Adrian, that's going to come through over and over in what we see today. So Bad habits, we're talking about procrastination, perfectionism, a few others you'll see that I put together. The way past each, and then we're going to have some things at the end that I didn't actually write about locus of control and motivational tools, so I'll have to remind myself and talk a little bit about it when I come to those slides. And also help me remember to come back to gratitude at the end. When I was doing my slides today, I didn't do a great job of referring back to my agenda to make sure I had it all in there, but I'll have it in as I talk. Okay, checklist. Please write the numbers that are true for you up in your chat. And I want to say welcome to Brianna, Liz. Oh, lots of people. Elizabeth, Liz. Lots of people are joining us. You haven't missed anything. We're just starting. So today's checklist. Are you likely to start your day with a list that never gets done? Put in a 1. Are you likely to make plans but not follow through? That gets a step number 2. To turn around and all of a sudden it's 6 months later and those things aren't even started or they're not where you expected to be. 6 months just flew by somehow. Number 4, and you might beat yourself up for every misspelled or small infraction of the academic writing rules. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you'll just put those in the chat. On the other hand, you might also not, these are not mutually exclusive, end the day with a smile on your face. Look at the calendar and your goals and be happy that you made your deadlines and catch the sunrise, sunset, smell the roses or other small treats. So Robert says 3, turn around and it's 6 months later, but still in that process. Oh, we have a couple of people who like this combination. It's a nice combination. Turn around and it's 6 months later, so time slips by, but at the same time, we're catching the sunrise, sunset, and smelling the roses. That's a nice combination. Nikki says 3 and 4, beating yourself up. Nikki, will watch for that in the perfectionism part. Anybody else have a thought about themselves? Ignorance is bliss. Well, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So a little bit of beating up, but also ending the day in a good attitude. Just consistent with procrastination and a few other things. So it's clear. Thank you all for that. You're in the right room. We're doing the right thing. And I hope at the end, just to back up, I'm going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, whether or not we met our goal, that you are leaving feeling better about yourself and the bad habits you may have, but also with some tools that will lead to your success. So we'll see how we do. Okay, so if you were to say which of these gets you down, procrastination, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 is good. Which of these things do you sometimes wonder about yourself as? And this is metacognition. This is when we take a look seriously and we say, am I living up to my own ideal? Not to somebody else's on the outside, but to my own. Do I procrastinate more than I want to? Do I run too much perfectionism at myself and I get myself down because of it? Do I think later, geez, I could have managed my time. I spent a lot of time doing something that wasn't that important. Maybe I'm going through a slack, and all of us have them, where self-esteem is bad, but maybe I also think of myself as an imposter and someday they're going to find me out. Distraction could get me the day that every Facebook notification that comes in, I have to go see, or every email. I may feel like I'm stuck in habits that no longer serve. So we're seeing some of these in people. People are saying, yeah, okay, if I look at that list, then I think maybe I have some of these things. Now, what Adrian said at the beginning is spot on. It isn't like that any of these are bad things. These are just a moment in time, and we can get past them. So what you don't do is beat yourself up or try to fix them all at once. What you do is look at them seriously, and that's, as academics, we look at the research about them seriously as well. That's what we're going to do today. And then we look at where am I on a scale and how do I move forward. And I'll talk more about that at the end of the class. Now, at this point, a little bit of authentic moment. I'm in my 60s. So from the position of being 60 years old or more, I can look back and I can say, these things are not nearly the problem they used to be. So there's some portion of this list that comes with it takes us a bit of time to get over. It's definitely a case where the tortoise wins the race. We just keep chipping away. Let's start with 3 I put together: procrastination, low self-esteem, and distraction. Now, think for a minute before I go into it. If you can figure out why I put those 3 in a cluster. Oh, my slide kind of messed up, didn't it? When it went to PDF. So why did we put them together? Because when I'm scared of something, and this was Adrian's point, then that translates into, I don't know if I'm big enough for this. This job may be bigger than I am. Therefore, I see myself less than the master I know I am becoming. One main way of not dealing with it would be procrastination or following distractions. So the one in the middle, I hypothesized was going to show up in research as being correlated to the others. And of course, when that happens, it magnifies that the task, it gets magnified. This tendency for procrastination or distraction magnifies when the task or goal is big, as in a dissertation or thesis, or it has unclear deadlines, as is a lot of universities work in this realm. So they might give you, I'm talking PhD land now, they might say, you have a lit review, you have your research to design, but they're big deadlines. And, or you might have just a year in, you have to be able to check in once a year, or that kind of thing. Little unclear. Easier for us to work when we figure out what the task is, we break it down, and we give ourselves clear deadlines when they don't. But let me move on. So in your slides, you'll have live links here. And I've started each of these with the link to the research. Some of it's PDF. And as you can see, the ones that were live links had a little trouble. So the slides look better in real life than they do on the screen. The first author, Clary, did research into procrastination and in general, and what it correlated to. So it did not correlate to GPA. So students were able, these were undergraduates, students were able to have massively good grades even if they saw themselves as chronic procrastinators. But it positively correlated to the not liking stress. Now, that's an interesting variable, not liking stress. So if I don't like it, I shy away from it. And if I shy away from stress, I shy away from situations that cause me stress. Well, that's almost hand in hand with shying away from situations that cause growth, because growth and stress are undeniably linked. The other thing that he found a positive correlation with was not thinking the project at hand was enjoyable. Now, I'm doing research on transferable skills for master's or doctoral students into non-academic jobs. And so what I see here is procrastination being significantly correlated with 2 things that will, in fact, cause a leadership position to be problematic for the person. If you don't think that the project at hand is enjoyable, that's fine. We all have projects we don't think they're enjoyable. But if you procrastinate because of it, you're not going to be a very good manager. And if you don't like stress and therefore back away from stress, you're not going to be a very good leader. So just some things to keep in mind. The second author correlated, again, you know, research is so interesting because we can take any given variable and we can see all the ways other people hooked it to variables. So this research hooks procrastination to fear of, with several scales side by side, the significant correlations between procrastination, fear of failure, and aversion to risk. It was interesting because both fear of failure and aversion to risk correlated with low self-esteem, anxiety, and what I thought was a very interesting variable, irrational cognitions, being when we think irrational thoughts, because this has happened. The whole world is going to fall on me, or I'm never going to get a job again, or all of those things. So that basically says, yep, if we go out there in the research world, we do see that procrastination, low self-esteem are connected by research. Then I went into, well, can we see procrastination and low self-esteem, and what do we know about that, and their linkages there. So self-efficacy for self-regulation, interesting variables, how people put it, isn't it? Self-efficacy for self-regulation. That's metacognition. I know what is going on with myself and I'm doing something about it. I'm taking action. Is the most predictive of the procrastination tendencies. So if I have strong self-efficacy for self-regulation, I don't have much procrastination, and vice versa. And as I point out, it is tied to metacognition, and metacognition is a major transferable skill. Going into the next bit of research, and again, when we look at research, what are we doing? We're pulling out the concepts and the word usage in case they may be helpful. So I thought it was interesting and helpful that there's actually two kinds of procrastination: decisional and behavioral. So those of you in the room, what do you think? Are you most likely to procrastinate making a decision, or to get something done? Hi, Ted. So what do you think? A few people. Decision, behavioral. Get something done, behavioral. Yeah, interesting sorting mechanism, isn't it? So then if we look backwards, both, by the way, both each are significantly related to low self-esteem on their measures. And this is a direct quote. Multiple regression analysis indicated that self-defeating tendencies of failure to complete crucial tasks, rejecting opportunities for pleasure, were significant predictors of decisional, behavioral, and overall dysfunctional procrastination. All right, so now we're getting into several research pieces that will come up throughout our conversation today. Who does this research? Psychologists do this research. And what is the field of psychology like? Well, pre-1980, it was all looking at negative factors. Then the positive psychologists came along, and they also are balancing the field by looking at what makes life thrive. But so when you go back and you look at research around this kind of topic, you have to keep in mind that many of the people that they are studying, or many of the things they're going after, are pretty dysfunctional definitions. All right. So what have we seen? We've seen that there are two kinds of major procrastination, decisional and behavioral, and we've seen that they do correlate to low self-esteem and distraction. We see that there's a continuum, and that continuum includes anxiety and irrational cognitions as well. Now, how do we pull that out? Well, Wendell and Erde, I think it was two people, you'll have to check the link, suggest that self-regulation is the key to overcoming procrastination. And in our work in Doctoral and Master's Net, we do a lot of talking about Pomodoro, planning and time management. If that's an interest to you, the next thing that's going on today is the Lingerers group, and we're having a pretty high-level conversation about goals, planning, time management, and risk aversion today. Is strengthening your will. These almost looked, I didn't look at the date on this one, but this is what they always used to say. If you could just be better at self-regulation, if you could just plan your time better, if you could just strengthen your will, then any altering of any of these lead to behaviors, and these are the things that will help you avoid those behaviors. I think we now see the world in a little bit more complex way, and the reality is ain't necessarily so. Yes, we do need to build our skills in planning and time management. We do need to become disciplined, which is the strength of building our will. Self-regulation and metacognition are key things, but they also aren't all of the key things to living a fulfilled or happy life. And when we come from a base of a fulfilled and happy life, they actually become easier. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, I think as we go through the cycles of life, that varies. But certainly around here, we are on the side of positive psychology and looking at the things that help us get stronger at the same time we build the disciplines. However, it wasn't in that particular piece of research. The next piece of research talked about 3 concepts, and these are all online. So again, because so much of our life is in technology, I thought this particular piece of research was interesting. Online procrastination, problematic internet use, and flow. And the authors said, the reason we chose these 3 things is because you could actually see them as being similar, as in they're all a lack of control, or you could see them as being different. 2 are a negative to work, and 1 is a positive, being flow. So how do we look at online work when we're in flow? Is it procrastination? Is it problematic internet use? How do we put that section of our time in our minds? And so in other words, when is it flow and when is it procrastination? Turns out that procrastination actually may be the connector between the internet use and flow. So there should be an E on that, us. So if we are in a procrastinating mood, then the internet and perhaps having some low self-esteem, and we're just kind of dawdling around on the internet, we may find a flow experience that's actually quite interesting, following this thing after this thing after this thing after this thing, but it doesn't take us anywhere as far as work code. And I'm typing in now. You might want to look up, we've seen it before in our talks, you might want to look up Urban as a TED Talk, very funny TED Talk on procrastination. His first name is Tim Urban. Okay, so looking back, just to make sure I'm caught up on our conversation in the room, and if you have anything else to say about low self-esteem, distraction, and procrastination taken together, Let me know. Adrian says that taking the time to think through certain logically and or conceptual issues isn't the same as procrastinating. Absolutely. Reflection and procrastination are not the same. Reflection is a high-level cognitive output, and it's the thing that will carry us forward. And when it comes to a big task like a dissertation, she's spot on. There are a lot of dissertation or thesis-related things that people can do. And those can help all of us do things like get past a writing thinking block. So, Adrienne, in complete agreement with those thoughts. Of course, if we could just sprout rings, one of my favorite quotes is somebody just said, you know, you never get it all done. So it is good to take the overview, which is what we're trying to do today, and take the overview on when is our personal procrastination tied to a moment in ourselves where we don't feel as good about ourselves as we want to. When are we likely to allow ourselves to be distracted at that moment? And if those three things are related in us, as research has shown they might be, then which one do we carry on with? Do we just take action that gets us past the procrastination and the distraction? And many would say it helps our self-esteem. Or do we do something that will help our self-esteem because it's something we're really good at, and then we'll have more energy to get past the procrastination and distraction? There's several ways around it, but when we look at the three together, we can see linkages and pick them apart. Adrian says, alternating the thinking that leads to avoidance behavior is equally important. Again, I think that totally agrees with the linkages of these three. We can work on feelings, we can work on thinking, we can take action. Just sometimes just taking action. Don't think about it, just do something. That'll help. Let me go down and see what else. Robert says it's similar to stopping smoking or losing weight. It only happens when you change your thinking, resulting in a change of your behavior, or you change your behavior, which results in your thinking. They can go back and forth. Any ideas on how to strengthen will? Map it, Nikki. You have a task. You have something you want to do. You're having difficulty doing it. And it's a to-do that hasn't gotten done for 2 weeks, and it's beginning to annoy you. So what do? You set very clear timetables. You block the time you're going to do it. You make them small bits of time so that they're doable. And then you give yourself kudos for doing them, and you map it. So a half an hour here, did I get it done? Yes. Okay, that gives me more strength to go on for the second half hour another time. Does that make sense? Small, doable, and then trackable. So you can say, well, this week, 4 out of 5 days I did it. So maybe I didn't do it this one weekday, but I did it 4 out of 5. So you have to figure out your tracking, you have to figure out your size, and you have to block your time. Those are the 3 parts. Take a deep breath, focus on the task, then proceed to the task. Absolutely. And Ted says, family commitment causes procrastination. Yes, actually, Ted, that is so part of what I'm going to talk about at 2 hours, well, an hour and a half now from now. The lingerers group today, we will talk, I call that risk management. We make goals, but if our goals and our family situation don't line up, then they cause us it's a risk, and we have to manage the risk. Liz agrees. So does Allie. Now, on the other hand, let me play out devil's advocate to friends and family if they are not needful relationships. Our friends and family also want us to succeed. And They want us, so we can say to them, we can negotiate with them. Right now, I know you want me to get my dissertation done. I know you want me to get out of graduate school. I'm going to need 3 months of pretty unrequited time. I'm going to need everybody to help me get the rest of my life done. I'm going to have dishes in the sink. I'm going to have dirty clothes. I'm just not going to worry about whether the bed's made, but I am going to get my writing done. Will you help? And will you make sure that nobody disturbs me? Will you take the kids? Will you whatever? You'll find that with that negotiation, family and friends can actually be your best allies. And Robert is saying something along the same lines as, when is it an excuse and when is it valid? And, you know, I think the thing here ties us back to what you'll see in the Tim Urban TED Talk, that what Tim found was that when he talked to PhDs, the reason people procrastinated on their PhD was that it went on for so long and it had undetermined timeline. And so it's easier to procrastinate if you don't have timeline goals. So Adrian says SMART goals. And yep, look up SMART goals if you don't know them. Oh, she's written them out: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. And that's useful, but for me, it's always been a bit, I don't know, a mixture of a little bit obvious and a little bit like too much headspace work to check them out, whether they were that. But SMART goals work for a lot of people. They hold your feet to the fire. That are your goals, all of those things. Balance. Liz brings up the word of balance and asking for what they need and asking for what you need. We're getting into the topic now of work-life balance, which is something else that we discuss frequently on Masters in Doctoral Net. And it's in its infancy. It isn't, I'm not sure it's in its final stage. It's a draft, say, but there is a 30-day work-life balance. It takes off with a webinar I did on work-life balance, and then it helped you pin 1 or 2 things you want to take on a week and you track them. So it uses the underpinning that I gave Nikki earlier on building willpower. And you can sign up for it on any of our websites under the resource section. Okay, let's move on to perfectionism, time management, and imposter syndrome. Now, I put these 3 together, and quite frankly, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to find research that merged them, or that found that they were significantly correlated, or that even whether researchers other than my own self had seen them. But I have seen, in working with hundreds of master's and doctoral students, if not thousands, that perfectionism can be a problem. And when it's a problem, time management goes to hell, because every task takes way longer than you think it's going to. I mean, years longer, folks, not just a little bit of time. And it goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome. Now, what is imposter syndrome? It's when you really don't think that in your heart of hearts, you don't believe your doctor or master's material, or that you think that you got to your sometimes very exalted position by luck and happenstance, and just one day somebody's going to find out what an imposter you are. It runs rampant in academia, and it also runs rampant in people who are in high positions in corporations. I have seen this in these 3 travel together in doctoral work, and I'll point to some of the things that go on with it. So first, we're going to talk here about a continuum from normal to maladaptive, because the research that I got into was the research of people who are doing very poorly and who in some cases might even be institutionalized very poorly. So all of the research doesn't impinge on you or the stage of life you're in, but it does tease out some interesting variables. Perfectionism travels along a continuum from normal to maladaptive. Normal perfectionists set realistic standards for themselves, derive pleasure from their painstaking labors, in other words, flow, and are capable of choosing to be less precise in certain circumstances, okay? And yes, Ted, it was one, Ted asked if depression can cause procrastination, and depression runs here in these pieces of research. I didn't bring it up because it's a bigger topic, Ted, but the short answer is yes. Maladaptive perfectionists, on the other hand, demand of themselves a usually unattainable level of performance, experience their efforts as unsatisfactory, and are unable to relax their standards even for a second. The development of maladaptive perfectionism tends to occur, and this is the part I want you to really pay attention to. It occurs in one of these two environments, and some university experiences of masters, or I don't know masters so much, but doctoral work can hold these two experiences. If you experience non-approval or inconsistent approval regularly, or if you are in an environment where you fail, or your university has failed to establish explicit performance standards. I have worked with doctoral students who could say that about their university structure. And in fairness, they had these three things. Finishing up, they were such a perfectionist that they never wanted to turn it in unless something was out of order, because they were afraid of the negative. Somebody in a previous time had said that their work wasn't well formed, and so it had to be perfect. That threw off their time management so badly. These are people who took 10 or 12 years to finish, and all along there was this underlying question of whether or not I can really get through. So these three things do travel together, and it makes it hard to get something done and manage your time if you've moved into the maladaptive side of this situation. So let's look at the research. First piece of research measures three types of perfectionism: self-oriented, other-oriented, and socially prescribed. The significant correlations on self-oriented and other-oriented, there were, but the fear of failure component of procrastination was associated broadly with all of them. However, the results suggest that procrastination stems in part from the anticipation of social disapproval from individuals with perfectionist standards for others. So if your standards are, oh my God, look at that book I just read, they had 3 misspelled words, you might be in fact turning that inward and anticipating social disapproval from others that may or may not kind of get you. This perfectionism, time management issues, and imposter syndrome, what ties them together is that you personally feel anxiety through all 3 of them, fear of failure. Theoretically, socially prescribed, second piece of research, socially prescribed perfectionism was expected to be exclusively maladaptive. So if the outside world expects you to be perfect, especially true as if you had parents that expected perfectionism, then it causes maladaptive results. Self-oriented perfectionism was expected in the study to have both maladaptive and adaptive characteristics, and in fact, they found that that was true. Okay, so a couple of kinds of perfectionism can be bad for us, can be good for us. It's sort of a bigger issue than maybe we considered. Imposter syndrome comes looking like this. Imposters are outwardly successful individuals who experience secret, intense feelings of fraudulence in achievement situations. Elements of perfectionism are evident in a tendency on the part of the imposters to maintain high standards. So, yes, there's a linkage. And the linkages are over things like mistakes and anxiety. Imposters also have this edge of not having control, feeling like they don't have control of things. They're going to catch me at being an imposter if I'm not in control. So anytime I'm up against something where I have to lose control because it's new and I actually don't know what I'm doing, that will cause great anxiety, have a huge negative effect, and I'll have even more concern over my mistakes. Can we see? I mean, you all are in this situation. Look around at the people in your cohorts. Look around at your fellow students and maybe even your professors. Can you see how this plays? Sometimes if we're under anxiety, we get, what's the word, too much. We broadcast too loudly. We become too opinionated. We overcompensate. These three are interesting in kind of very small, insidious ways. The second researcher found a correlation between behavioral self-handicapping, in other words, shame and guilt proneness, to perfectionism and imposter syndrome. I liked that phrase, behavioral self-handicapping. Well, you know, to some extent, we all do it. Okay, before we move into tools, let me look back. Anybody have any comments on this? Let me move back. And it is, Adrian brings up fixed mindset. If you don't know the work of Carol Dweck, she postulates that there are two basic mindsets when it comes to learning, fixed and what's the second one? Open learning. I've forgotten how she phrases it. One means I learn from my mistakes, and the other means the world has to prove to me that I'm good enough. So if they tell me I'm good, I'm good. If they tell me I'm bad, I cave. That's the fixed mindset. And yes, they can go hand in hand. What we're looking at here, and this might be true for all of your fields of study. I don't know everything you're involved in, but it is true for education that I know well, and also psychology, which I know fairly well, that when we start to study things in the human endeavor, we pick it apart in many ways. And we have many words for it. So that when we have conversations like this, it's not unusual that everybody's saying, oh, like that, oh, like that, because you may have heard these concepts, just different words used for the variables. When you say to anyone listening, I've got this, says the imposter, perfect leader with time under control, at least that leader believes it. Yep. Robert brings up the tie between our emotional feeling of stability and any of these. So when we are, say we're all on a continuum, and sometimes we're more of these things than we are of others. When we are in the more of these than others, we can become, depressed would be one word, although I don't like to use it so much because it's a clinical word. And we may be clinically depressed, but also we may just be down and unable to move a little bit, where we feel like we're going to go for distractions and watch Doctor Who series from beginning to end or something. So the things do travel. They do cluster, and they cluster in our lives. So what do we do about them? Anybody have anything else they want to add? Raise your hand if you want to add something before I go on to what do we do about it. Welcome also to the people who entered later. If you entered at the time when I was already talking, this is being recorded and you can catch the beginning. Okay, tools. So what do we do about it? Well, here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you look at any one of these issues and you draw a line from adaptive to maladaptive. And you figure out at this moment where you are. So if we look back, I have to go back several slides, so bear with me for the flashing lights. If we go back to this list at the beginning, where are you on each of these continuums? On the continuum that you are most to the maladaptive side, where it's, and what do we mean by that? We mean that it's getting in the way of your work or your esteem or your personal relationships. Then, a few more slides going forward. Then you put yourself on that continuum and you proceed on the one that is that. Now, so that's metacognition. I am here on all of these different things. I know where I am. I feel it's true, whether I like it or not. This is my truth at the moment. I realize that my truth at the moment can change widely and variedly. And so I'm going to move it in the direction I want to move. Now, that's metacognition. Now we bring in a couple of tools, tools that we use regularly around here. You can look them up. Pomodoro is a technique for time management, but it keeps our focus on a certain task. And Kanban Flow is an online tool. Again, these are going to be discussed in more depth on the Lingerers group, which is coming up in an hour and 15 minutes. So you use some tool and you use some way of working a process to move that particular thing that is a bit too much maladaptive back the other direction. Now, you're not going to go from 100 to 0 overnight. So if you've been procrastinating more than you want, you set a goal that at the end of the week, you'll have completed 3 days, 3 sections of time without procrastination. You will have not you will have turned off your notifications. You can make up your own to-do lists. And then you give your small to-dos regularly tested, and you focus on the positive outcomes, not the mistakes. And the needle, if you look at it as a needle moving from one side to the other, the needle will move back in the positive direction. Now, if you self-identify as maladaptive, really honestly maladaptive on any one of these, then you should also take responsibility and consider outside help, because outside help gets you past things faster than doing it yourself does. Guaranteed. Even if you're in the moderate field, if you can afford it, consider some kind of guidance, coaching, counseling, whatever. It helps you move from C to B to A much more quickly. And it's part of the mindset. Thank you, Adrian, fixed in growth mindset. Growth was the word I was forgetting. It's a growth mindset says, I know who I am, and I know I'm a learner, and I know that sometimes learners need outside help to help them learn. So that's the steps of moving ahead. Now, we're all brought together by the fact that you're graduate students, master's or doctoral students, and there's specific things on the website that are aimed at helping these issues in different ways. The 30-day challenges, writing challenge and work-life balance challenge, are set up to get you going on something that's hard to get going, on building a writing habit, on learning all the ins and outs of writing a very big document, or on tying in this amazing thing you've taken on for yourself to get your graduate in the middle of an already busy life. The motivational emails are little snippets that come to you either every day or once a month, but they're the top 10 from the month before. And I've given you a link there that takes you to one that just came out recently because it was a video on how to stay motivated. So that will show you both what these 365s look like, and also the kind of thing that my partner Margie brings to you. They're upbeat. They're meant to be upbeat. They're meant to be move you forward. They're meant to give you good ideas. They take less than 30 seconds to look at. They're a little bit of upscale in your life. Adrian says, great focus and progress tracker if you're on iOS app is to recommend for those who use iPhones. It's called Forest. Every time you succeed in focusing on a particular task within the preset time period, your task tree grows and eventually blossoms. Oh, this is good. You can help plant a tree in the real world, even if you earn enough credits, from being focused. That's really good. And I just heard, maybe one of you will know, there's a web browser out there that by browsing, it helps you plant trees. Oh, darn, it was one of those things I was going to. Eco something, Margie's telling me from the other room. So if you're interested in getting trees planted, which is a good, nice side benefit, and if some of you are off looking it up, look up tree planting web browsers and see what we get. Videos, I've given you a couple of things. These are things, so what do we do when we're feeling a little down? Well, we might go listen to a motivational speaker, and this guy, Brendan Burchard, is good. We also might, I like to listen to certain kinds of music. So this Live Better Music on YouTube, it's a few pictures, but mostly music. And they do have a good upbeat background music. And you will, Robert asked, will we be able to download the presentation? We will. The presentation will be on Big Marker. You'll have access because you came to class, and it also will be eventually on the Doctoral Net YouTube channel. Another one, TED Talks, always good for bringing us interesting things if we don't use them for procrastination or distraction. Adam Grant, The Surprising Habits of Original Thinkers, Tim Urban, and one fell off the slides because of the bad PDF mix, Charlie Haversat, Perfectionism Holds Us Back. Recommend all of them. And look at this, 7 minutes to go. It's our time in the room. If you have any other questions about anything, you're welcome to ask. While I just say hello, if you're from Qatar, TAMU, or Cal Poly, we're saying welcome to new universities who are using our services. June 23rd is the last day, so this coming Friday is the last day you can sign up for Let's Get Published. After that, it'll be a closed group. Dr. Maria is coming back this summer, and she's going to do some more things on criticality. And I'm working, as I've said today, on transferable skills. So let's see. I think I can go from beginning. I can go back to the beginning. That's a nice thing. And scale of 1 to 5, please. How did we do? Does today leave you feeling better about yourself and any bad habits you might think? And if it does, did I give you some tools to help you get past them? Would you recommend this to others? 1 to 5, let me know how we did. We always take your recommendations seriously. When we're getting mostly 4s and 5s, we're okay, but when we're less than that, we always ask you to tell us what else we might have done. Good, good. So, Nikki, you might want to pull down the work-life balance chart. You can use it for other things. I put it up on an Excel chart. It might be helpful to you. Liz, thank you. If there's something, whenever we're not feeling hopeful, one thing we can do is get with the group. And that's why most 10 months a year, Doctoral Net, Masters Net have things going on the web. Many people actually just drop in to kind of get that sense of, oh yeah, they're talking about stuff that impacts my life. and I can understand it. So it's glad, more hopeful and motivated. And please come back. And Robert says is positive that his procrastination is now considered a disease, maladaptive for sure, Robert, and can be dealt with through a larger metacognitive attitude. A bit of tongue-in-cheek on that one. We do, like I said, we need to be aware that when we are down on ourselves, it's not necessarily we've gotten to the maladaptive place. But if we have gotten to the maladaptive place, reach for help. Okay, what else? Anything? Any other votes want to come in? Laughter is the best medicine. When we can laugh at ourselves, we're always on the right side of the continuum. Thank you very much. Glad to meet you. Good luck in your new place in Arkansas. Good luck to everybody in the room. We know we work with you because master's and doctoral students are the best, most interesting students on the planet. And we are in a particularly happy place because we get to work with you all over the world. And so with that, I'll say goodbye. I'll end the recording. And